doors are closing.
Public transit, that's my way to roll. On the metro, I'm taking control. Bus stops, train tracks, it's my daily grind. Transit is
Welcome to Transit Tangents, the podcast where we will dive into the world of urban mobility. Join us as we explore the systems that keep our cities moving, interview transit experts from across the U.S., uncover the past events that got us where we are today, and discover the exciting future that lies ahead. All of this and more is coming up on Transit Tangents.
Hey everybody, welcome to the first episode of Transit Tangents. My name's Lewis.
I'm Chris.
I think we're both very excited to be releasing what we've been working on to the world at this point.
Yeah. It's been a couple weeks of hard work, a lot of filming, and getting ready for this final release.
Yeah, and
the first release, not final.
The final release.
First and final.
And that's going to be about it. The final release? No. Yeah, so basically we are putting this podcast together, all things transit related. Rather than us just explaining it to you first, we put together a little supercut, if you will, of some of the first episodes that we put together. So without further ado, let's take a watch or a listen to what we've done so far.
Let's see what's coming up.
Today, so this is our first shoot day. We are gonna essentially do an experiment to see what it is like for somebody who has not used the bus before.
So I think I'm going to start then by figuring out what the app is.
Public transit to...
Oh no, we missed it.
Oh no, we missed the bus. Do we know which stops you have to pull the cord on?
Oh, there are. Okay, let's see on the app.
And I would say I'm kind of more on like the more extreme side of like literally just wanting a train to go through the city and not a highway. And
This little path. That is what Google is telling me to follow to get to the nearest bus. Do you ever use the train in Austin too? Is it pretty much just the bus? Do you mix up scooters or Ubers?
no, I did use the train once and I was like, oh my God, I'm in Europe right now. Like, it's like
It's the 20. This is where we need to be.
I asked you in the car, how did living on the bus lines affect your choice in where you live? And if you are trying to avoid transfers or you know that you're going to actively use the bus, it absolutely affects where you want to be in town.
Absolutely.
we love to walk and we love to bike everywhere. And
So first bus ride in Austin?
Not bad.
Not bad, yeah. So as you can see, we are going to dive into all types of topics on the podcast. We're going to have some really fun and some crazy challenges coming up. As you can see from the highlight reel, we are teaching a friend how to ride the bus. We're talking to longtime transit users in the city, and we're also talking about some upcoming projects in the Austin area. But don't worry, it's not going to be Austin all the time. We are going to check out some other cities as well.
Totally, yeah, and we had a lot of fun putting those first couple together. Try to get like a variety of opinions. The bus one for me was really fun to put together, in particular, just as someone who uses the bus a fairly decent amount, going out with someone who'd never done it before. It's like fun to see it from the perspective of someone who's never used it really before. And like, yeah.
It was good for you to put together. It was me cringing the whole time, saying like, oh, why did I not think of how to use an app? Why did I not think of this? I look like an idiot.
Yeah, but yeah, lots of fun stuff to come though. So if you're seeing us for the first time, you want to see that, please make sure you subscribe or follow or whatever platform you're listening or watching on to make sure you catch all of that good stuff. But enough about all of that. Let's get into why are we actually doing this. So Chris, why for you, what is it that's pushing you towards doing this? And I've got my own reasons. You've got your reasons. A lot of them overlap, but yeah.
Yeah, for me, when we first started talking about this idea, there's this question that came to mind that I run into this scenario all the time where someone says, I really love blank city, but I just wish that we had public transit. And that question kind of frustrates me because a lot of cities do have public transit, and we should be more active in figuring out how to use the systems that exist in our city. So my idea from this is, or what I hope that we achieve with this is that we're teaching people how to use the transit in their city, educating people on what options are out there, talking about things that are coming up in the future. All of that really interests me, and I want it to interest other people too.
Totally, yeah. I mean, a lot of my reasons align there as well, but like, I also enjoy, it's easy to be like hyper focused in your community or where you've lived and grown up or used public transit, but also to learn more about how other places do it. You know, like we're going to talk about places that we haven't been to before or that we're going to travel to, and like taking lessons from other cities that are doing a good job and seeing how you could apply them in your own place, in your own city is I think really valuable, and you can learn quite a bit there. And
we're going to talk to people in those cities to decide if they actually are doing a good job.
Yeah.
From the outside, maybe it's great, but once you're there, who knows?
Right.
So,
Yeah. So, no, lots to look forward to. And I mean, what's really like motivated me in the last year, really, just to like share some of my own story with this is almost 2 years ago now, I guess, a year and a half ago, I actually sold a vehicle about 2 months after buying an e-bike. And you'll hear me singing the praises of e-bikes over and over and over again throughout this podcast, almost as much as gondolas. We'll get into gondolas later, but yeah, I mean, frankly, not to sound dramatic, my e-bike has changed my life. It has, though. Again, I got it. I was basically stopped using my car for 90% of trips. Around the same time, I moved in with my partner. So we have one car in our household that now mostly sits in the driveway because I successfully converted my partner Jerry onto the religion of e-bikes.
The cult of e-bikes.
We use them all the time though, and I joke often that like we'll be riding home from a concert or something at night, and I'll be like, is this real? We're just like riding down like nice, for the most part, you know, we live in a part of town that's pretty bikeable. We're just like, it's really changed my life for the better, and it's made me think about different ways to get around and how, you know, over-reliance on cars, while it may, you know, sound like freedom to some people, having other options to me feels like more freedom. I'm not against cars by any means. We use a car, but looking at other, whether it be public transit, whether it be bikes, whether, you know, all these different things. So for me, I've actually had like an awakening to this over the last couple of years.
I like the way you put that. I'm not part of the e-bike cult yet. But I am mostly a car user. As we've begun this project, I've been experimenting a little bit more with the public transit system in Austin. But most of my experience in public transit has been when I'm traveling to cities all over the country or in Europe or wherever. And I do travel a lot. And you know, it's really easy for me to jump on a train to go somewhere, like from the airport or when I'm in downtown. But I've always been a little intimidated by buses and other forms of public transit. So I'm excited to get into this and learn more about those options. But being primarily a car user, I would like to use public transit more. Unfortunately, where I live in town, it's not super easy. For those who know Austin, half the city is sort of very hilly. I live on that half. And we also discovered the other day the closest bus stop to me is a 35-minute walk.
And Chris did it.
Which I did. And it was very hot that day, despite it being winter, because it's Texas. Yeah, so I'm really excited to get into this.
Yeah.
All right, so to get us started, I'm just going to run through a few different types of transportation, and I really want to get your feedback on these different types of transportation, so we can sort of show people all the things that we're going to talk about on the show.
Totally.
So first up, easiest one, buses.
Buses, right. I mean, it's kind of like the bedrock of public transportation in so many cities. You're going to be hard-pressed to find a place that doesn't have buses unless you're talking very rural. I would say it's one of those things that, as we'll talk about in the next couple episodes, actually, one of those things that a lot of people are weary to use for the first time, but I would make the argument that in most cases we're going to be showcasing that maybe they shouldn't be so weary. There's obviously things we worry about with everything in this world, but on the list of those things, buses is not near the top. So yeah, but I think it's crucial for so many cities. So many people here in Austin and in cities across the country rely on buses in a major way. And you know, we'll definitely, there's ways to improve it, but it's a bedrock fundamental piece of any good, well-rounded public transportation system.
Very nice. Nicely put. I'm becoming a believer in buses now after having some experience with the other shoots that we've done, and having the experience in Austin. It actually is pretty convenient depending on where you are in town. So I'll leave it at that so that I don't spoil anything for the upcoming episodes.
Yeah.
This next one is pretty easy, but when you think of public transit, what's the first type that comes to mind?
Well, I think for most people, the answer is train. For me, it's gondola. We'll get into that now. Train, for sure. And there's just so many varieties of train. Obviously, you've got like people think, now high-speed rail gets a lot of the conversation, even though we don't really have it in the United States.
Yep.
But in other parts of the world, we look at their systems. You've got regional rail to go from city to city, but I think for most people, they think subway, metro systems, light rail, that sort of stuff, makes a pretty big impact. And I would say it's like what most people probably put in their like top tier of public transit in the U.S. is like New York City subways or something like that. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think when most people make the statement, like I mentioned earlier, about I love Blink City, but I just wish we had public transit, they're really saying I wish we had trains.
Yes.
I wish we had trains, or I wish we had light rail. Replacing the buses, because again, people are wary about buses.
Yeah. Buses aren't sexy, and there are people who won't, who would ride a train but won't ride a bus. I would say that.
Yeah, I was kind of one of those people again before this, but it wasn't. Yeah, I didn't have a prejudice against buses. It was just more. You'll see in the later video, I had a lot of anxiety. We called it cord anxiety. I didn't know how to make the bus stop. I didn't know how to make it stop for me.
Even knowing the routes and all that sort of stuff. The train is so much more obvious.
Where a train's going to go.
Right.
It's not going to deviate off the hopefully. It's not going to deviate off the tracks very far. But you know exactly where it's going to go. The stations are fixed. On a bus, it's a little more flexible. There's traffic, there's accidents, there's road work. So there's a little more question to it. I also think that trains typically are a little more on time. So maybe I'm wrong about that. We'll find out. But so I think that's where most people think about public transit is definitely the train.
For sure.
One that is really common in the world, but we don't have much experience here, but ferries.
Yeah, I mean, I think given the right location, they can be a very useful and I would say probably affordable tool to do it. You don't need to build tracks. You don't need to build roads. You literally just need docks
water.
And boats. Yeah.
just add water and you get a ferry.
I would say there's probably, I haven't really thought about it. There's probably a lot of places in the United States that could majorly benefit from like good ferry lines and have it be a pretty low cost option.
And investing in fast ferries. I think that's the thing. Ferry travel, anytime I've taken one, it's pretty slow. And I used to have a lot more experience because where I grew up in Mobile, Alabama, there is a ferry that takes you from Dauphin Island, which is this barrier island south of the city, to Fort Morgan Peninsula. And it's only about a 3-mile gap. It's a 45-minute ferry.
Ooh, yeah, that's
45 minutes.
Insanely slow, actually. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
So I've always been turned off by using ferries for
makes
that
sense
reason.
when you see that.
I'm like, oh, it's going to take so long.
Yep.
But then I go to you go to New York or you go to Boston, and they have ferries that are actually a part of the transportation network, and they're fairly quick. Fairly quick. We're gonna end it there. But yeah, so I think we'll definitely talk more about those. And what's really interesting, and I've been reading up a lot more about communities like in Alaska, even and some in the Northeast that rely on ferries.
Yeah.
You have to take a ferry to get from point A to point B. Otherwise, it is like a days-long car ride to get around. So really excited to actually talk about those.
Yeah, the ferry episode. Stay tuned.
Yeah. Another easy one. So airports and air travel.
Yeah. It's an interesting one too. I feel like the U.S. is especially because we don't have high-speed rail like other parts of the country, or sorry, other parts of the world. We take flights that are kind of laughable to other parts of the world. I would say in a lot of cases.
30 minutes to Dallas.
Right.
25 minutes to Houston.
Yeah, and it's those are places that high-speed rail could make a big thing. So maybe that could be a fun episode talking about that. But planes obviously also have a gap. You're not going to have high-speed rail from LA to Washington, D.C. will basically never make sense unless they invent like crazy, I don't know, that would be wild. A plane is going to have to fill those long gaps all the time. But yeah, I mean, probably most people listening to this have experience taking a plane at one point or another. So whether your city has public transit or not. And
No, I agree. I think, again, we're talking about all types of transit, and air travel in the U.S., we're so heavily dependent on it. Which I work with a lot of Europeans, and their experience in traveling and mine are so different.
Yeah,
and it's because of the train networks. So I'm really excited to talk about that as well. But also we have some really cool airport projects in the U.S. happening right now. So that's going to fill up some content later.
Yeah.
Biking, and I guess we can include e-bikes in this if you want to sing the praises of the e-bike cult.
Yeah, I mean, I sang them a little bit already, so I'll hold back a little bit this time. But of course, bikes is like such an easy way to get around for people, especially if you're in a city. A lot of cities too are like heavily investing in their kind of bike networks and whatnot. So whether that be like protected bike lanes, urban trails, that sort of stuff. So I love to see all those sorts of different projects. I kind of like nerd out about them. When it's not in City Skylines 2 yet, but when I was playing City Skylines, I would have like really great bike networks in my cities, and I would like take the time to do that. So, but bikes can play a major role, and especially e-bikes now. They can, if your city is like Austin, where we're not the densest city, they can make the lack of density so much easier to kind of make up for with an e-bike, and also just like cost effectiveness versus a car. Like you can, in a lot of cases, actually replace a car with an e-bike in a city even like Austin, and people are doing it. So I think that bikes are a major part of all of this right now.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm really happy to see in more cities, in Austin, especially in New York, you have things like the city bike system in New York, or just any type of bike rental program, where you literally pick the bike up from a kiosk and then you get to ride it to the next kiosk. And it's a great way to fill that transit gap.
Totally.
So again, we'll talk a little bit more about that. I have a great experience from college where we tried to do free bikes on campus. It did not go well.
I haven't heard that story.
Oh, it's good. It's good. It's coming up. All right, so this one's going to be a little bit more controversial. Many cities have banned this type of transportation, but scooters.
Yeah. Austin is not one of those cities at this point.
No, it's definitely not.
There are pros and cons to the scooters, don't get me wrong. I am generally pro scooter. And we're talking like the rental scooters, like Bird or Lime or
now Lyft.
Yeah, there's a million different versions of them. I generally like them because they help fill that gap for a lot of people of like, getting the last mile or whatever from wherever they're going. I would say that I think it eliminates some car trips, I would say. And frankly, in a city like Austin, and even a lot of cities though, like you can't get to the final destination super easy. There's a lot of places that have like, getting that final mile, it's good for. I will say though that there's a lot of downsides of like just like down scooters all over the place, all over the sidewalks, strewn about the grass, and like it runs into issues for people who are trying to like navigate on a wheelchair or something. You'll get to a sidewalk that's like clogged with a bunch of scooters that are just parked in weird places, and that's a problem. But
yeah, I agree. That is definitely a problem. We see that in Austin. We see it in other cities. I don't know how many scooters are in Town Lake at this point.
Enough.
Yeah, that it's more of an environmental hazard.
Yeah.
So definitely controversial. I will say I have been guilty of being a scooter advocate. Because I used to work in downtown Austin, and being able to take the scooter from my office to across downtown to have lunch with somebody in 5 minutes versus getting in my car or taking 20 minutes to walk.
Yeah,
it was nice. It was nice to have it.
Totally.
Now, when I see scooters that are really far removed from downtown in residential neighborhoods, I don't know how they got there. Then I'm kind of like, maybe they don't need to be here. It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
But for the downtown, more urban cores of our cities, I do think that they can, similar to bikes, fill that transportation gap.
Totally. Yeah. I would say though, given, and maybe we should talk about this in detail at some point, but like the pros and cons of like the scooter model versus the like kind of dockable bike model.
Yeah, I do wish that scooters had docks. Like I think that would solve a lot of the problems.
Yeah, that could be a fun episode in the future to like
dockable scooters.
Dockable scooters. Yeah.
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 This is the motion for scooters. All right, so kind of on that same topic of these companies that have sort of disrupted this transit scene. Rideshare. So we're talking Uber, Lyft. In Austin, we have a company called Wings and a few others. There's the Ferry buses that are like the rideshare sprinter vans where you can take like 5, 6, 8 people. Yeah, what are your thoughts on rideshare?
I mean, again, I think it kind of fills a gap that needs to be filled at the moment. I mean, again, public transit isn't going to get you everywhere, unfortunately, as it stands right now, at least. And it also, once you get a bigger group of people, it starts to make financial sense to do that sort of thing. Yeah. And I would also say that it can, in some cases, help people get rid of a car if it's like, okay, I need, someone like me, I need a car for like a couple trips a month, rather than spending a couple $100s a month or for some people, the average car payment's insane. It's a $600-700 a month or whatever, add on insurance, all that other stuff. For me, it was lower, but if I have to get 4 Ubers a month, that's still,
Still gonna be cheaper
makes a
than
lot of sense.
owning a vehicle.
Totally. Yeah.
I like rideshare, especially when it. I keep saying this, but fills the gap. When say you're out late at night and the buses aren't running their full schedule, or the train has stopped at midnight.
Yep.
For whatever reason, it stops at midnight. It's really hard to get back to your place. Rideshare is the option.
Totally.
I think that it stops a lot of people from driving drunk. They do serve a purpose in the transit network, and so I'm in support. Now we'll get into the rideshare companies and some of the tactics they've used to secure their places in the cities, especially against like the taxi industry. That's a lot of really interesting discussion that we can have there.
And I would also say
but
that
I do
like,
think that they're necessary.
Yeah, and I would say that cities shouldn't use it as an excuse to like not have their transit run past midnight on a Saturday, which is like a thing that many cities across the U.S. are guilty of, or at least having the service deplete like tremendously after 11 or whatever it may be. So
100%.
Yeah.
These are also some other options that are some people may not think of immediately as transit. They're not going to be forthcoming in their mind, but sidewalks, pretty integral part of the transportation network. You have to have good sidewalks to be able to get from the bus stop to your destination. For anybody who has any type of mobility assistance needed, if you're a wheelchair user, you rely on good sidewalks to get you around. If you're in a really dense area and there's no bike lane, it's sometimes safer, and depending on if it's legal in your city.
Right. Yeah.
Not every city is it legal, but in some cases, if there's a roadway where you don't feel safe on your bicycle, the sidewalk is an option. So I think sidewalks are part of transit.
Totally. Wow. Totally. And I think at one point we were talking about this, like, arguably sidewalks probably move more people in a lot of cities than any other form of transit, including roads.
Think of New York.
And like it's funny because like you're having to use your own legs on it, but like it is like a mode of transit that is getting you around, kind of. I mean,
if we're going to talk about roads, which we are, then sidewalks are very similar in that.
Totally.
In that vein.
Yeah.
PRTs.
Yeah, so this is one, I didn't know this at one point when we discussed this. You were like, well, what do you think about PRTs? And I was like, what the hell is a PRT?
What if you had to guess what it stood for at that time? What do you think?
I've been trying to think of what I think I said public rapid transit or something, or personal it is. So that's what it is.
There you go.
I didn't get there on the first one, but personal rapid transit. These are kind of like there's some conversations about these kind of making a comeback, but there's one system that you've pointed out in West Virginia.
Yeah, Morgantown, West Virginia has probably the most successfully run PRT system in the U.S. history. There's a bunch of West Virginia campuses, and the PRT sort of ferries students back and forth. Not with a ferry, but ferries students back and forth between the campuses, and so it's a really interesting one. I think definitely warrants a visit from us.
Yeah.
But when I think of PRTs, I also think of the Tesla tunnel in Vegas.
Yeah.
Very similar concept.
And I believe the Las Vegas City Council, like earlier this year in 2023, they passed some sort of funding to actually like expand that pretty extensively, to have like stations at all sorts of casinos, and like people will literally be moving around in Teslas in the tunnels, which feels funny and inefficient to have them in Teslas just for the sake of having them in Teslas, but that's a whole other conversation. But
you haven't been at the Tesla tunnel.
I have not. Have you been in it?
No, I haven't.
Okay.
I need to check it out.
That could be cool. Yeah. So
here we come, Vegas. We're coming your way.
Yep. And then
the last one. So you're going to notice this is going to be a running theme through the whole show. You've probably seen it on the logo already.
I forgot about that.
We have the logo literally plastered with it. But gondolas.
Yeah. Chris and I both have we once went and met for drinks, and I think we talked for probably 45 minutes about how, like, even in a city like Austin, where a lot of people probably don't think it would make sense, although there was a push here at one point for gondolas, but
not just us, but there still is.
Gondolas just seem to make so much sense for so many different reasons, and you'll hear all sorts of them. Obviously, like, we're talking gondolas like you might see at a ski resort or something like that, but you also do see them in real application in cities around the world. I have had the absolute honor and privilege of visiting one city in the world that uses them seamlessly with their metro system, and that's in Medellin in Colombia. It literally you get your day pass on a train, and you can like transfer by getting off of a train and literally walking straight onto a gondola.
Yeah.
And when I say walking straight onto a gondola, I mean it because there's no wait for a gondola ever. There's always one coming, and if you miss that one, guess what? There's another one literally right behind it.
Tell that to any skier or snowboarder. There's always a wait for a gondola.
Well,
But not in Medellin.
That's fair. That's fair in that context, I guess.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Wow. Okay. Wow. You're really bringing me down right now. No.
We're highly pro gondola.
Yes.
We understand not everybody is pro gondola. There's a reason why Austin didn't move forward with its plan. They didn't feel like it
They're not
was
smart.
they didn't feel like it moved enough people, or like that it was gonna be as efficient as a train or a bus. So there's arguments for and
I
against.
actually don't know how you can make the argument that it's worse than a bus.
It's not the point of this episode. This is not the gondola episode. But it is something that we both really enjoy, and it's kind of a goofier version of public transit. Like I like the idea of this city where you just see gondolas moving in multiple directions, and that's kind of why we chose the logo, because we both nerd out about them, and we have this secret desire for gondolas everywhere.
I lightly mentioned City Skylines earlier, but my last City Skylines One City had some decent gondola coverage, I will say.
I think we should start a City Skylines and it'd be like Transit Town or Tangent Town. And we'll just try different modes of public transportation in the
That would be
city.
like
Or
heavily
we should
focused on
definitely do
just
that.
one
Yeah.
thing. That would be cool. We might have to do it in City Skylines 1, which will be a thing
be a
because
little easier.
you only have gondolas in City Skylines 1. You don't have it in 2 yet. So
I didn't realize that.
yeah, it's a major no bikes and no gondolas. How am I playing that game right now? Those are two things near and dear to my heart. So yeah, yeah.
And then, of course, we're also going to be talking about highway expansions. There's a big one in Austin, and there's an upcoming episode of Transit Tangents where we talk about the expansion of I-35, which is looming over us in 2024. But we'll also talk about some cool highway projects, toll roads, and everything in between throughout the episodes.
Right, like them or not, they're a major reality for like transit in the U.S. Highways between cities to me make a whole lot of sense, but highways running through the middle of cities, we get
not
into
so
that in a future episode where we'll kind of discuss that. So
Absolutely.
so that's, I mean, we're going to be talking about all sorts of things like that, but before we kind of wrap things up for our first episode here, I'm just curious, do you have any favorite transit memory or story or anything like that?
It's hard to pick a favorite story. I can tell you what my favorite experience was on transit, and this is somewhat recent, and I got to be a big train nerd about it. But my husband and I, Brent, we were celebrating an anniversary, and we were in Germany. And I had originally planned this trip to be nothing but like a train-centric travel experience. I was planning on trains from Amsterdam to Cologne and Cologne to Stuttgart, and we were gonna do the whole thing with public transit. And 2 or 3 days before the trip, I got a text from Brent that said, "Hey, I rented a car." I'm like, who goes to Europe and rents a car? Anyway, so we ended up there, and to make up for us using a car for the entire trip, he took me to this little town outside of Cologne called Wuppertal. And in Wuppertal, and I cannot pronounce the name of what it's actually called, but is the world's oldest monorail. And what's amazing about this is that it is a suspended train. It's 2 cars. It's suspended on one monorail. So it's not like what you think of when you think of like Disney monorail and the maglev. It's not that. It's literally just a train suspended from the air, and it follows this beautiful river through this valley town. And they have big glass windows on either end, and it is the most scenic and beautiful and interesting piece of transit I've ever seen. And that's so far has been my absolute favorite experience ever, was getting to ride this train in Wuppertal. And then we were just in New York, and we went to the MoMA, and at the MoMA we were walking through one of the exhibits, and they had a video of the original trains of the Wuppertal back in I think the video was from the 20s.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
It was amazing.
Yeah.
So I got to like pull up my video and look at this video and be like, "Hey, I just did this."
Yeah.
To everyone in the room, and nobody was interested. So it's just me.
That is pretty cool. I've seen the videos of it too. I wasn't aware of that being where it was when you were there. I forget the name of the town you said already, but Wuppertal. Yeah, it was pretty cool when you sent me that. You were like, "Check this thing out," and I was like,
it's
"Wow,
amazing."
yeah."
What about you? What's been one of your favorite or maybe even funniest transit experiences that you've had?
So this isn't even all like, I mean, actually, it follows the thing on the list here that you're kind of talking about. I had the privilege, my partner Jerry was at a conference in Europe this summer. So he had like kind of all expenses, flights and stuff taken care of for him. And I was like, okay, like I can make this happen. Like I had never been to Europe before. So we were in Italy for the summer, not for the summer, for 2 weeks. I wish I was in Italy.
Wow.
I wish I was in Italy for the summer, maybe someday. But on our way back, we went from our Airbnb in Florence, in downtown Florence, all the way to our apartment in Austin, Texas, without being in a private vehicle, which is pretty wild. So we went from we walked to the tram line in downtown Florence, and it's this cute little tram that has, I think they have a couple lines in Florence, and we took it from downtown, and it goes all the way out to the airport in Florence. Got on the airport. Unfortunately, we had 3 flights on the way home because of just like the cost difference of doing it. So we flew from Florence to Paris, Paris to New York City. And then in New York City, wild, actually, I forgot about this. This is an extra step that was dumb. New York City, JFK is under construction. And we actually had to physically go outside of the airport to transfer to a different terminal, as in like walk outside of security. And then we had to wait for a bus outside of security, get on a bus, go to another terminal, and then get the last flight to Austin. And then at my old apartment in Austin, I lived right off of the 20, which is the one bus that runs to the airport in Austin. And we were getting off, and I was like, you know, Jerry is just like ready to just go to the Uber lot or whatever and go get an Uber. And I was like, Jerry, it says the bus is gonna leave in 5 minutes. We might as well just go. And the bus literally dropped like 2.5 minutes from my old apartment. So we, after traveling for like 12 hours, went and we got on the bus and we got dropped off at our apartment at like almost 11 o'clock at night after being in Florence that morning. Yeah,
That's amazing. And it was about 12 hours door to door, you think?
yeah, roughly. Yeah.
I had an experience once where I was sitting in DC waiting for the red line, and the red line was delayed. I'm looking at my phone, and I got the idea, like, could I get home with just public transit from here? And so I did that, and for me to like take the red line to Union Station to the Amtrak to Chicago, Chicago to Austin, the 20 to downtown, another bus to my place, it would have taken me about a week. So, so the fact that you could do that in 12 hours to Florence is amazing. From DC, I can do it in a week.
It was kind of like a challenge because we also almost like, we had a little bit of a walk to get to that tram in Florence even. Like we arguably should have taken a taxi or an Uber to the airport, but I was just kind of like had it in my head like, no, we're not gonna do that, because we like took the train all through Italy and everything. And yeah, I mean, but
once
otherwise,
you're in the mindset, it's so easy to kind of continue in that mindset of we're gonna find another way to do this.
Totally. And it's like, it was, I don't know, it was pretty funny to be able to say that we had done that. But I mean, I've got a lot of other fun experiences, but I think that one kind of like stands out, that it's just like, it was kind of so ridiculous that, that it's just like so much time, exhausted at the end of it too, just like so tired, wanting to be home. And what was funny, and like classic like pros and cons of the bus style, the bus was supposed to leave in 5 minutes. We ended up sitting there for like 15 because like the driver had to go to the bathroom and like. Did
you get any shit from Jerry where he was like, we could already be in the Uber right now?
I mean, I could feel the like eyes looking at me, but I didn't. I was just like too tired to just like, no, I'm just gonna sit here.
I can't imagine Jerry ever being angry though, or being like, we should have done this. I just can't imagine it. He's so sweet.
Well, it happens. Not very often. Not very often.
Might want to edit this part out.
Yeah. No.
I think it's a good recap of everything that we're going to talk about. Again, multiple types of transit, everything from buses to gondolas to sidewalks to scooters to highways, everything in between. I guess to finish this up, what is a summary? What are you hoping to get out of this experience?
Yeah, I mean, I hope that it allows both me to like look harder at some of these things and like evaluate, things that can be done in, my own local community that can make a difference. I mean, I think it didn't really strike me until the last year and a half or so that things as simple as like, improving the sidewalks in your city, or like the bike lanes, or like a new trail, or things like that could make such a difference, and like you saying something about it can make such a difference. And I hope that it like number one, I learned more about all of these things, but number two, maybe help encourage more folks to like, hey, reach out to your local city council person or your mayor or whatever it may be in your town or city, and like, you know, join some local group that's trying to do something like positive in your city. You know, one of the episodes coming up, we go to this Rethink 35 event, and there's this great community of folks who are really passionate about that issue. There are great communities of folks who are really passionate about biking and really passionate about, you know, running or whatever it may be. And just to try to like encourage more folks to get out and find those groups. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have other thoughts to build onto that?
I'm glad you touched on, you know, talk to your local representatives, because as we go through these and we start talking about transit options, this is an opportunity for you to look at your city and say, what are we missing? Why isn't there a bus stop at this local hospital? Right. I have a whole rant about that. Why isn't, you know, why don't we have a train? Talk to your local officials about it, because all of these decisions, all of these transit options that we're talking about really do start at the local level. So we hope that we can empower more people to consider their surroundings and reach out. Also, I just wanted the ability to talk about these things in a way that is fun and engaging and connects with other transit nerds.
And it won't be just you and I sitting there ranting about it
exactly.
over drinks after rock climbing or something.
Yeah. Comment below if you're part of the Gondola Gang. And then
yes, hashtag Gondola Gang. We just started something. Unintentional. Yeah, well,
awesome.
I think that's a good place to end it. Again, we've got a lot of fun episodes coming up that we put a lot of time and effort into, so would really appreciate it if you could share it with more of your friends who are into this sort of thing. It goes a long way. Subscribe, like the video, whatever, you know, like the podcast or share it, whatever platform you're watching or listening on, please do the things there to help us out. We'll also make sure that links to all of our kind of social media pages for this stuff are all in the description. So please definitely check those out. But yeah, stay tuned. Lots of fun stuff coming. The next episode you'll see is featuring our friend Michelle and her journey to using the bus, along with Chris, using the bus here in Austin. So.
Yeah, mine and Michelle's first time learning how to use the bus in Austin. So it's exciting stuff.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm saving that dough. Public transit's where it's at. Watch me go. I'm rolling in style with my headphones on. Cruising through the city to my favorite song.